Welcome to Whose Lines It Anyway, where the jokes are made up and the points don't matter.
I'm Wayne Brady.
That is not Wayne Brady.
I'm Colin Mockery.
And he's the other guy.
You're the guest that's always
I'm
not
Drew
funny.
Carey. I look great.
Oh,
my
great.
God.
You want to see more? Subscribe to our fans only.
All right, y'all just do the podcast. I'm going to play some Zelda. Bitcha! Bitcha!
It's time for 5 Minute Men.
As he chugs his wine. Fuck yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
And then we're gonna solve some problems in 5 minutes.
But how are we going to know what we need to solve?
I'm glad you asked, Hayden. We got a bunch of problems in a hat that we found on the street, and we thought, hey, we can solve those.
Give me a problem to solve. I have to.
I'll give you a problem to solve. I didn't even look.
Problem.
I pulled it out randomly.
Climate change.
Climate change.
Climate change.
That's a good one.
Yeah.
We are actually informed on this one. I studied geology for like 7 years. I should know this.
That's rocks, though.
What was your first major?
No, we did philosophy.
Oh, does that like cancel out any other major you have after that?
No, it was still my minor.
I like arguing with rocks.
Because they don't talk back and they don't tell me I'm wrong.
If your first major was philosophy, did you really major in anything else?
Did I even really go to college?
What is a major?
Let me tell you.
Now, I have a theory. Hear me out.
My creative writing major says so much.
Yeah.
BAs, bitches.
I have a geology degree and I run an education place. Cutter, you have a creative writing degree, and what do you do?
And I drive a forklift.
I have
Hated.
an economics degree, and I look at transcripts all day. Ooh.
So fun.
Ooh. Putting our money to good use.
Not doing economics.
Set a timer for 5 minutes.
Honestly, I'm super into this slushy margarita now.
God. It's like as you get deeper into it, it's just like, oh my God, I love you.
Oh,
Just-
Oh, that was so quick. Time's up.
Pencils down. Who's going first? I vote we roll dice.
I don't have any dice.
Look it up on Google. I'm going to roll a D6.
Snake eyes.
I
I got 2.
got 1. Cutter, you got a 6.
No, you got a 1.
No, I got a. Wait, did you already roll on yours?
Cutter, did you roll for yourself?
With what? I have an 8-ball. Do you want to roll with that?
You can look it up on Google.
Roll an 8-ball.
Yeah, it's.
I'm saying I rolled.
under my bed, so I don't know what happens.
I rolled for him, and he got a 6.
Okay, because you can just look up like roll dice on Google. And
Oh,
And it
you
will-
want me to look? Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't know we were all doing that. I thought y'all were rolling for me. I can roll dice. Like I got a 4. I got a 4. Okay.
Okay, I'll roll it.
Still higher.
5.
Oh.
Well, convenient.
Wait,
got a
you rolled
5
twice. That was
after
your
I rolled a
second roll.
4.
I was saying let's all roll again because he didn't
We
know.
got a 2, a 1, and a
come on.
4.
Hey, fuck it, I'll go. Doesn't matter.
No, I got a 1. That means I go first.
Okay.
Because I got the lowest one, so I have to go first.
Alright.
And my idea is the stupidest. So
No, you have to go by. You have to go by position. So you go 1. So you go first.
okay. First thing you have to understand is I know what I'm talking about. Okay, so how to solve climate change? Mushrooms. Hear me out. So there's more CO2 in the soil, in the Earth's soil, than in any living thing and in the atmosphere. And in the atmosphere, combined, okay? Because that's just how shit works. Mushrooms will eat that. All right, so we just need to plant mushrooms everywhere, all
He said it all. He was just like,
over the earth. We just need to plant mushrooms everywhere. The more mushrooms we have, they will turn that carbon dioxide, eat it, and then do something with it. Maybe release it back as just good old oxygen back in. I don't know.
Maybe it will go up into the atmosphere and make stars.
Yeah.
So, what does this do for climate? What is it eating? Carbon dioxide?
Carbon dioxide.
so my question is, don't trees do the same thing? Like, why mushrooms specifically?
Well, okay, so trees, when they take in CO2 from the atmosphere, they do that to some degree, every plant. But when a plant or a tree dies, then what happens is that goes right back into the soil. That's why there's so much CO2 back in the soil.
Oh, so it doesn't necessarily convert it.
Right, it doesn't convert it.
Okay.
But mushrooms digest it and turn it into something else.
Oh, so they're more efficient converters than.
Yeah.
And I guess I would assume like fungus is easier to grow, at least on a. From my understanding, like fungus is usually in smaller. The actual life forms are actually smaller, so it's easier to grow than like a tree, which would take time to be able to get big enough to actually produce it. So I assume that you could probably do a lot of fungus easily versus planting a forest of trees, forest, which could take a decade, if not more, to fully establish itself.
Yeah, where mushrooms can grow overnight.
I know we have machines and everything that can pull CO2 from the air, so maybe some kind of thing that could funnel that into a chamber that's
filled with mushrooms or something. Or fungus.
Something. I feel like it just seems that it's cheaper to grow that than it would be to create something as functional. Maybe I'm not really sure what the economic cost of it would be, but I know that something that you can just grow and it does it on its own would probably be easier than building some kind of contraption that would do it.
It's like in Biodome when they make that huge filter out of cigarette butts or cigarette filters to clean the atmosphere. Yeah. Just make a huge mushroom filter.
I love that documentary.
It's good.
Especially Edinburgh. Really
Polly Shores.
Can I ask my question?
Yeah.
No.
Sorry, I didn't mean to kill your vibe on that one.
It's the greatest movie of all time.
Does CO2 in the soil have anything to do with climate change?
I have no idea.
Because I think if you were to,
think about it. If it heats up the ground and makes the ground warmer, then that heat is going to rise and dissipate into the atmosphere, causing the atmosphere to be warmer as well.
Hayden, have you ever played The Floor is Lava? It is not a fun game. In reality.
I forgot about The Floor is Lava. Fuck me, I'm an idiot.
Newton's third law.
The floor is lava.
It's one of those laws. The floor is law.
That's my favorite of his laws.
Yeah.
I don't know, because if you could take the same idea and apply it to aerial CO2 or carbon dioxide in the air.
Mm-hmm. As plants grow, they absorb CO2, producing carbon-rich biomass. Fungi then decompose this material, liberating CO2 back into the environment.
Oh, good.
As with animals, it is a natural byproduct of their metabolism. For example, a pearl oyster mushroom patch can release up to 2.5 pounds of CO2, or roughly half its weight. I still stand by that mushrooms will save the world, but maybe it's a specific type of mushroom.
Okay.
That does the opposite of what most other mushrooms do?
Yeah, like a rebel mushroom. Yeah. He's a fungi. 4 things to know about fungi climate warriors.
Well, I think I guess the one thing you can pull from it, though, is that if there's a biological means to concentrately pull CO2 out of the air, I mean, that's it's something that could be worth pursuing.
Some fungi called mycorrhizal fungi can exist entirely underground, growing symbiotically with the roots of trees. These fungi may not be visible to us, but our research group has found that these mycorrhizal fungi are doing us a huge climate favor behind the scenes. These fungi are climate change warriors, helping forests absorb CO2 pollution, delaying the effects of global warming and protecting our planet.
Oh, I see.
Yet,
Okay. They almost become
even-
like storage.
Yeah.
That's cool. I like that.
Well, that might be. I mean, you talk about. I think what do you do with CO2 now? As far as like they talk about, they catch it and those make it by mechanical means. What do we do with that? Do we just store it in like? I mean, is it like air filters we just throw out or something? But maybe it's better to throw that into mushrooms and then use those mushrooms for something. Even if you throw that into a landfill, that's got to be better at decomposing than something else, right? I mean,
Yeah.
I would think anyway.
Yeah.
Not a bad idea. It's like underground mushrooms.
Yeah.
Invisible
But
mushrooms.
they're like human activity and pollution are causing forests to lose their fungal carbon guardians, and the loss of these fungi may be accelerating climate change.
Yeah, I mean, like more mushrooms wouldn't hurt,
Yeah, I wish there was something. I mean, I'm sure with the possibility of CRISPR and everything now, maybe we
Right.
can genetically modify. I mean, just any kind of generic-looking tree that could just be really kick-ass at taking carbon out of the air. I mean, it's kind of dangerous. I think it's a very dangerous game, I guess, playing with that because you don't really know what the intended consequences could be of putting something like that out there. But at the same time, I think we could try it out. If we have orchards and everything, why can't we just have orchards of these tree farms that better the air quality around them?
Yeah. So I think that's one step that we could do. That's my shtick.
Here's 10 reasons why you're wrong.
Okay.
The first thing I wrote down was that we need to time travel to the 1800s and prevent the Industrial Revolution from happening.
Ooh.
Like, that's the best thing we could do.
God, like like you talk about like when you remove somebody from history,
Yeah.
and that all the consequences. You want to remove the Industrial Revolution?
If we're just talking about climate change, yes. If
Hey,
we're talking about, like technological advancement, absolutely not. I would-
continue. Maybe for the climate change, continue.
yeah. So for that, my next point is delete cars. I just wrote down delete cars.
Control Alt.
I wrote down repent. The devil is climate change. Hellfire be upon us. That's what I wrote. I also wrote down big bubble. Around the earth, big bubble. That might do something. But for my actual answer is emission trading. I don't know if you are familiar with this idea. But some people, it's known as like carbon credit trading or carbon trading.
For the people listening that don't know what that is, can you explain it?
So carbon is an element, and carbon is the devil. I'm kidding. So
how does this relate to the big bubble exactly?
Well, we're all in a simulation, and the simulation takes place in a big bubble. Now, the overlords have started climate change in this big bubble, so we must pop the big bubble to let out all the sickness.
Is that true?
Thoughts? No, I'm kidding. Okay, but actually, trading. So let's just look at two countries, Canada and the United States. We both emit X amount of pollution, right? Let's assume for this example that the USA has more people or more like a bigger population than Canada. So the US would emit more than Canada would. Just simplifying here. So let's say that the US gets 10 credits. Okay, they have 10 like coins that allows them to, after a certain amount of emissions that they've produced, you have to spend a token. So every 10 units of emissions or whatever, you spend a token. And then once you're out of tokens, that's it. You can't emit anymore, or you have to buy more or trade with somebody for their token, right? So let's assume for the example that the US runs out of their tokens really fast and emits all this carbon or all these, emissions. Canada only uses half of theirs. So let's say the United States has 10, Canada has 8. We use all of our 10. They use 4. So we have 0 and they have 4. We could buy 2 of theirs if they want to sell it to us. So then we can each emit, like they can still emit some and we can still emit some since we reached our quota, right? So basically what that does is sets a cap. So give every country an amount of emissions that they're allowed to produce. And if they go over it, they either have to pay for any additional emissions that they have after that, or have to buy a credit from somebody else, or trade emissions. So that sets a market cap essentially on the amount of emissions that are produced every year. Then all you do is lower the cap each year. And so you divvy up the carbon credits based on how much you pollute. And it kind of, as a market, if you're looking at it from like a market perspective, the goal would be to lower and lower and lower emissions to a socially acceptable level of emission, because we can't not drive cars, right? Like factories have to produce at this point. There's a certain level of emissions that is kind of accepted at this point as like inevitable.
Yeah.
But the rate at which that is growing is what's causing climate change and making it worse. So if we could curtail that by putting a limit on it and disincentivizing somebody to produce more than they're allowed, I think that's the most logical solution. And there's been like, I could pull up studies if you want, but there's been examples of that working and countries, trying that out. But if we don't all agree to it, then there's no fucking point. So it would have to be a global like thing that we all
agreement
accept. Yeah.
And I think that would incentivize people to look towards alternative, more efficient energies.
Right.
Yeah, and if you had it to city metrics, you could apply it to you could apply that standardization to so much information that just is easy to comprehend. I mean, because I think there is efforts to do that. After, like you said, there is the technology out there to do that. But when you tell me there's 430 pounds of carbon in your atmosphere in this area versus this area, or whatever it may be, that number's lost. I mean, it's arbitrary to me. I don't really know what that means, but putting it to some kind of standardization makes that real. Sorry to interrupt you, Tyler. Go ahead.
No, I think it's as simple as coming up with quantifying what region or what your emission is going to be for your area is really going to be just a simple algebraic equation of
times area.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, because New York is obviously going to have a higher cap than Lubbock, Texas, or Amarillo, Texas. And in order to even if people are underreporting or coming in there and having a margin of error, which, it's not going to be 100% laser precise on it because we can't measure it that accurately. It's the same concept as setting the speed limit to 75 because everyone's going to do 80. Mm-hmm. So as you lower that bar every year, and that's the goal of getting it lower and lower, even if people are underreporting, they're still trying to get as close as they can to that. For sure. And it's still going to lower emissions.
Down, then it's working.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I think what would be a cool incentive thing to tie in with this, let's for the sake of the example, Canada gets 10, US gets 10. We would lower the number for Canada every year, right? But we should make it to where we don't change the US's amount of pollution. Yeah. So if they're gonna keep over polluting, they have to pay somebody for somebody else's tokens or whatever. Like there has to be some sort of financial, either a fee, right, like a punishment fee, or put them in a situation where they have to purchase a token from somebody else or purchase a credit from somebody else. So then hopefully they're like, fuck, we're losing a lot of money on these credits. We really need to stop doing what we're doing, or else look what it's doing to our debt counter, right?
Sure.
It make it a bigger deal. Make the stakes higher,
So climate change. So a big thing that I think you can correlate with climate change is the decline of. I think we've always done so. Y'all have been kind of big on the carbon issue, right? I think we're ignoring a big part of climate change as far as the climate itself, which would be that obviously the biggest thing to affect climate would be spiritualism and religion. So obviously, like one of the premises of many religions is the maintenance of a harmonious relationship between believers and their physical environment. And if basically, I mean, every source I found is that religion has actually gone down. And actually, if you go back to previous things, so one thing I'm familiar with as far as like South is Indians of the Southwest, they do a bunch of like rain dances, basically rituals associated with the climate change. Now, back when the Spaniards first encountered them, they had populations that circled around, from one source, around up to like 3,000, and 3 to 5,000. Now, the Mojave population, which includes Pueblos, Navajo, and Hopi, only number around like 1,100. I think with that is that, there's nobody doing rain dances anymore. Without people doing rain dances, which is a big part of what is that?
No, continue. I love it. I love it.
You can't laugh. You can't laugh during my argument.
I was trying to hold it in.
You're correct. You're correct.
I can laugh at Hayden's Chuck E. Cheese tokens for carbon pollution. Okay, you can't laugh at my rain dance.
Okay, I'm sorry. I retract my laughter.
It's too late. Damage is done. But
rain dances continue.
I'm listening.
I don't know how to continue now. You just completely pull me off track.
I'm laughing at Tyler now.
I'm not laughing at you. I'm laughing at the people who are laughing at you.
I'm crying.
Shit. Okay. So nobody's doing rain dances. What do we need to do?
Well, I think we should start rain dancing. First of all, I mean, what are you laughing at?
Oh my god.
Okay.
I'm not even through with my
honestly
point.
I'm laughing, but I really actually think it's a good idea.
Can't hurt, right?
No, you're not listening to my point. Okay, so listen. So obviously, I think like I said, religion, like many religions, revolve around this need to maintain your physical environment around you. It's part of your kind of responsibility as an advocate of your religion. Unless you're in a hugely polytheistic religion where you have like a bunch of different gods and you're doing one that like is against nature itself. Basically, the decline of this religion, I think, so it'd be one thing to say like these rain dances are effective as far as making rain or anything like that. Not really what I'm looking for. What I think the rain dances do is that it's kind of like it's definitely an emotional event tied to the religion.
I'm sorry.
How does that make you laugh? I am giving you. Oh my gosh.
It's like when you're in church and you're not supposed to laugh, and it makes you laugh even more.
Oh god.
I'm crying so much.
Oh my gosh.
Okay, no, I'm listening. I'm listening though. Just don't pay attention to me.
Just don't pay attention to you. Okay, I'll try not to listen to your cackle.
I can only see Connor. Okay.
So what I believe at the least, okay, so since religion as a whole is declining, there is now a mass of people who do not have a secular religion. And so I think that we should Swear to God, if you laugh, I'm gonna be so fucking pissed. I have to go back. Oh, you're holding your hand over your mouth. I have to look at the window. You meet yourself? You did meet yourself.
Wow.
Wow. That's like so ridiculous. Okay, so anyway. So the emotional part that comes with doing the rain dance, I think, is it's a return back to being aware of nature. It's returning back to nature. I think that one of the things that you can agree on both scientifically and religiously is that you have a tie into nature and to your physical surrounding. That makes sense on a logical and religious thing. So I think with all these people who have no religion, I think the incorporation of doing maybe older activities or looking at older cultures that have done like these rain dances and stuff can kind of bring the significance of nature back into their normal lives, into their daily lives, as far as it's just a matter of, it's something that makes you more aware of the world around you. And if you care more about these rain dances, so forth, then you would care naturally more about what's affecting those rain dances, what's affecting the weather, what's affecting all these things, and which should lead you to care more about carbon emissions, global warming. And as far as so I just think that maybe we should do some kind of cultural resurgence of these rain dances and get people back on board to kind of shake it up a bit and call down the rain from the gods and see what happens, because at the very least you get people who are at least fundamentally or at least basically tied to nature, and maybe you'll have some interest revolve around climate change, kind of research from that.
I like
yourself
it.
now.
I unmuted myself.
You're gonna mute yourself.
Oh my god! I gotta wipe my tears off.
Okay, that was
you moved me. You made me cry.
Did it make you cry? I feel it's almost like the feeling from like a moving speech, except.
Okay,
I felt something.
So legitimately, I love the sentiment of this.
Yeah.
For real. Yeah. Like I love the idea of people turning back in and looking at their community and their surroundings, because it is who we are. It's synergistic with who we are and how we interact. Like, we can't deny our environment, right? And I think like having that awareness is huge. I just couldn't stop picturing myself doing a rain dance, and I fucking love that image, and it's hysterical. I think that's cool. Like, maybe there is some sort
problem, guys. Maybe you shouldn't picture yourself doing rain dances. You get out there and do some.
That's what I was gonna say. I think like it's some part of me that's uncomfortable with the idea of doing a rain dance, when in actuality it's just me looking at my surroundings and celebrating it and hoping for something better. Legitimately, like, there's something childlike about it that I'm just like, I don't know,
I think that honestly, I think your point is extremely valid, because I think the reason, or I believe you, that the reason that climate change is such an issue is people do not have that emotional connection to the earth and their land. And if we had something like that, that would cause emotion and causing us to care about it, because it's so often the thought that, oh, well, it's not going to affect me, or I'm going to die before it gets to the point where it's going to kill us off and we can't even go outside. We don't care about it to that extent.
Yeah, and I guess my point would be, I'm not asking everyone to follow the religion of following nature or anything like that, but I think that if you have a bunch of people who are atheists or who don't believe in any religion whatsoever right now, I think that maybe if you can at least incorporate nature into your open beliefs, as far as, and it follows, I think, a logical standpoint as well as a religious standpoint. Sure. I think you can find a lot of clarity within that, as far as you can find a religion. If your religion is just being kinder to nature and leaving it better than you found it, well, that's not such a terrible thing to follow.
Yeah,
I mean, and believe in, I don't believe, so.
And it's something to believe in.
Maybe a return to a basic, kind of a and I don't want to say that the old native beliefs are like primitive or basic or anything like that, but maybe more of a naturalistic view of religion and being more here and the now with the physical environment around you. I think that belief can do a lot for you as far as it makes you care more about the environment around you, instead of I don't, as far as I just think it just makes you more aware of it. That's for sure. And so I think, having ceremonies like the rain dance, even if it is, you don't really think that's going to call rain to you or anything like that. I think being aware of it and doing it, maybe participating within it and looking into the lines of it, maybe that would bring back a more appreciation for nature. And maybe, I don't know, you're more aware of what the weather is doing, with that, because you're more tied to it religiously on a spiritual and belief level, or just a, kind of just a factual level. But I don't know. I just think that's as far as getting the common person, average person back on board, with it. I think just maybe a return back to not a religion of nature necessarily, but maybe these kind of older ancient beliefs of being about, signifying the physical environment around you and having a responsibility to tend to the environment around you.
See, not even like yeah, that is definitely a tenet of some ancient theories and thoughts, but even like Thoreau and Emerson, right? Like the transcendental movement and like living out in the fucking woods and fending for yourself and building a cabin. Like that's a very American sentiment in
It's appealing. It's very appealing.
And it's super. It's definitely romanticized in a weird way, but it's not acted on, right? Like there's, I'm guilty of that. Like I read Walden and I fell in love with it, like that's definitely, it got me closer and more in tune with nature and its beauty and its power and how I relate with it and how it's involved in my life and how it's inevitable and beautiful. But like, I think that's just reading a book at the end of the day, right? Like you can take with that what you will, but until you actually make an action, like rain dance, like how much good is it actually doing, right?
I'm going to be 100% honest with you. I am actually going to start doing rain dances. Not even not even joking. Like 100% going to do it. I don't care if it's ridiculous.
We start every episode with a rain dance.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're actually solving climate change, not just theoretically, but practically.
I just don't think it's such a bad thing to return back to that belief of, there's a world around you that is your responsibility to upkeep. For whatever reason. And I just think that's I don't think it's I don't think it's a solution for all of that, but at the same time, I think it's pretty good probably for being able to a slow return back to caring about the little things of nature. If you're not going to have a secular belief, well, maybe believe in this one little thing that maybe you should keep nature going, for this reason.
I don't think we won't have any change or any major change unless we can care about what we're trying to change first.
Yep.
So I don't think there will ever be a global policy, even with emission trading or anything, unless the majority or everyone collectively agrees that this is something important and this is something that we should care about. Damn. I thought that you were going to go somewhere so different with that. And I thought you were being so sarcastic, and you might have been being sarcastic.
Fate, never. Fate is disturbing.
Never sarcastic. Fuck you.
It was hilarious.
It was so funny. I did not expect it. Did not expect it.
That's definitely. I feel like that's going to be a lasting thing from this podcast, even if the podcast.
I'm telling you, it's like you doubted.
Cutter solved
second half of the argument.
with rain dances, okay, and he got us all on board.
What should we do? We'll start rain dance.
Rain dance.
You're not listening. That's so good. All right,
you're right. You were so right. I convinced them. Ironically, I'm
going to vote for Cutter
because of the simplification. Yeah. Of course you are. But anyway, I'm going to say Hayden is a good second because I really like the simplified standardization of carbon pollution. I really like that metric and model of it. And frankly, I think more people will read the standardifications of carbon pollution before they'll start rain dancing, frankly. So, as far as the most viable solution, I think Hayden would have the most viable lasting.
I think it'll be about 50-50.
I mean, who knows? Rain dancing.
A lot of.
is-
I mean, all it takes is one Instagram influencer.
you can
to
make
start
a
rain
chart where you can rain dance now, and it's
It would cost a lot less money to just do a bunch of rain dances.
yeah, you can mostly involves. I had to get a account to unlock the next part of this, but apparently involves a lot of singing and zigzag patterns.
What would even happen if everybody in the whole world did a rain dance at the same time?
I'm hoping it rains.
fucking flood.
Yeah.
It'd rain
Yeah.
somewhere, I guarantee it.
I mean,
Guarantee it'd rain somewhere.
Do you think Noah was like a really good rain dancer?
Just had
No,
the
you're just a
moves.
really weird zookeeper. Okay, Cutter wins.
Cutter wins. Hey, next time you're in town, Cutter, we are going into my backyard and we're doing a fucking rain dance. Dude, you gave me the giggles hardcore.
Yeah, that was good. That was a very good
I'm
one.
glad that you enjoyed my argument for saving the world via climate change.
I definitely wanted to not expect, and that surprise and that shock threw me into a giggle fit.
Well, here's the obligatory end call for our podcast. Like, comment, subscribe if you like rain dancing. If you don't subscribe, you're gonna die.